Life is full of moments that test our strength, resilience, and courage. This is a story about a grandmother, Grace, who becomes the unwavering protector of her granddaughter, Emma, after uncovering the truth behind the child's silent suffering. As Emma battles emotional scars caused by years of hidden abuse, Grace's love and determination lead them on a journey of healing, justice, and hope. Today's life story is a powerful reminder of the importance of speaking out, finding courage, and the unbreakable bond of family. Subscribe to our channel to start today's story. It was a rainy afternoon in Summitville, a quiet town tucked in the rolling hills of Ohio, that I found myself gazing out the window of my kitchen. The rhythmic tapping of raindrops on the glass filled the house with a soothing warmth, a comfort I had grown accustomed to over the years. The smell of freshly brewed tea and the sight of the hydrangeas in my backyard, drenched by the downpour, brought me a sense of peace. My name is Grace Thompson, and I had spent over 3 decades working as a nurse. Gaining more than medical knowledge, I had learned to see beyond the surface, to understand the complexities of the human soul. I checked my watch. My daughter Charlotte and her husband Ryan were due to arrive with my granddaughter Emma soon. I had spent the morning preparing for their visit, setting the table with lemon tea and the homemade blueberry muffins that Charlotte and Emma always enjoyed. Today, Charlotte and Ryan were embarking on a 6-month overseas assignment, and I would be taking care of Emma during their absence. My heart swelled with love as I thought about my granddaughter, but also with concern. It had been a while since I'd seen Emma, and I couldn't help but notice the changes in her the last time we spoke over the phone. She had always been lively, full of energy, but I sensed something was different now. As I heard the familiar sound of the doorbell, I hurried to answer it. Charlotte, tall and elegant in her designer suit, stood at the door, her blonde hair perfectly styled, and her coat collar turned up to shield her from the rain. "Mom, sorry we're a little late," she said with a quick kiss on my cheek, her smile warm but strained. Behind her stood Emma. I caught my breath. Emma, my sweet, bright granddaughter, was no longer the bubbly girl I remembered. She looked thinner, with a sad, almost distant look in her eyes. The energetic, joyful child who had once spent hours playing with me was now a shadow of herself. Her beautiful brown hair, which had always shone with life, seemed dull, and her posture was slumped, as if the weight of something heavy was bearing down on her young shoulders. "Hello, Grandma," Emma whispered in a small voice, her gaze fixed on the floor, avoiding eye contact. I could barely contain my sadness. "Oh, Emma, I'm so happy to see you," I said, my voice trembling as I approached her, hoping to offer comfort with a hug. But when I reached out, I felt her body stiffen, her discomfort palpable. I quickly withdrew, trying to mask my concern with a smile. "Come on in, I've baked muffins," I added, hoping to ease the tension. Inside, Ryan was already seated on the sofa. As an executive at an architectural firm, he always exuded confidence and charm, his social demeanor effortlessly winning people over. His appearance had not changed since I had last seen him. He still looked like the same well-groomed, polished man I had met years ago. Yet, despite his charisma, something about Ryan always unsettled me. There was a coldness in his eyes, especially when he looked at Charlotte and Emma, that sent a shiver down my spine. "Grace, you're looking as young as ever. Your beauty hasn't faded since you retired," Ryan remarked, offering me one of his trademark smiles. I nodded slightly, acknowledging his words but not fully engaging. I had long since learned to look past his charming exterior. There was something off about him, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. But I couldn't ignore it any longer. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong in their family. Though Charlotte always reassured me that everything was fine. As I poured tea for everyone, I asked, "So, can you tell me the details of this overseas assignment again?" I needed to divert my mind, but I couldn't help but feel a growing sense of unease. Before Ryan could answer, Charlotte spoke, explaining quickly. "Ryan's company won a large project in Singapore, and I've been tasked with launching a new business in the Asian region. We'll both be very busy, so we thought it would be best to leave Emma with you for the time being." I observed Charlotte as she spoke, and my heart ached. Her face showed signs of exhaustion, and the underlying anxiety in her voice was unmistakable. Over the past few years, Charlotte's phone calls had become less frequent, and family gatherings had become rarer. I had tried to voice my concerns, but she always brushed them off, saying, "I'm fine, Mom, just busy with work," before changing the subject. It had been a long time since I had truly connected with my daughter. And even though she was standing right in front of me, I couldn't shake the feeling that she was slipping further away from me. Just as Emma seemed to be slipping further into herself, I turned to Emma, trying to lighten the mood. "Emma, would you like to see your room? I've prepared the sunniest room on the second floor for you." Emma looked toward Charlotte, who gave her a slight nod. She walked slowly up the stairs with me, but her fragile frame felt even thinner than before. As we reached the room, I opened the curtains to show her the view of the big oak tree in the backyard. "Look, you can see the squirrels scurrying around the tree in the mornings," I said, trying to engage her with something familiar. But Emma's response was minimal. She barely acknowledged the view. I sat beside her on the bed, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. "Emma, what's wrong? Is something bothering you?" For a moment, Emma's eyes met mine, and there was something in her gaze that spoke volumes, an unspoken sadness. A fear she couldn't articulate. But before I could ask more, she quickly looked away and said, "Nothing, Grandma." I knew there was more. I could feel it deep inside me. A mother's intuition that something was terribly wrong. But I didn't press her. Not yet. Instead, I just held her in silence, hoping that one day she would open up to me. When we returned downstairs, I tried to push my worries aside, telling myself I had done the right thing by offering her this safe space. Charlotte and Ryan were preparing to leave, and I could see how torn Charlotte was. She hugged Emma tightly and whispered, "Be good. Don't cause Grandma any trouble." Ryan gave Emma a brief, almost indifferent pat on the head, his eyes hard and unyielding. I watched them leave, the car disappearing down the driveway. As the silence of the house enveloped me, I turned to Emma, gently placing my hand on her shoulder. "Well, it's just the two of us for a while now," I said softly. "You can tell me anything." "Emma." She nodded quietly, her silence more telling than any words she could have spoken. The days following Charlotte and Ryan's departure were filled with silence, an eerie quiet that seemed to weigh heavily in the house. The sound of rain had ceased, leaving behind a cool stillness that mirrored the atmosphere around Emma. Every morning, I would wake early to prepare breakfast, hoping that today would be the day she would open up, hoping to see a spark of the lively girl I once knew. I made her favorite, French toast, drizzled with maple syrup and topped with fresh strawberries. But each day, Emma's appetite remained absent. The food would sit untouched, her fork moving only enough to stir the plate's contents. "Emma, breakfast is ready," I would call gently, but her response was always slow, hesitant, almost as if she was in no rush to face the world. She would eventually come downstairs, her thin frame wrapped in oversized pajamas that hung limply on her body, as though she were a ghost, drifting through the house. "Good morning, Grandma," she would whisper each time, her voice soft, barely audible. I would greet her with a warm smile, trying to coax a sense of normalcy into our days. But no matter what I prepared, no matter how hard I tried to connect, Emma's pallor and thinness grew more pronounced each passing day. It was as if a darkness had settled deep within her, one she could not escape. I remember one night, as I lay in bed reading, I was suddenly stirred by the faint sound of crying. At first, I thought it was my imagination, but the sound was unmistakable, soft, choked sobs coming from Emma's room. My heart pounded in my chest as I rushed to her side. The door was slightly ajar, and I pushed it open quietly. Emma was curled up on her bed, shaking violently, her small body racked with sobs. "Emma, sweetheart, it's okay," I whispered, kneeling beside her. I gathered her trembling form into my arms, trying to offer her the comfort she so desperately needed. "Grandma's here," I murmured softly, stroking her hair in the way I knew would soothe her. She looked up at me with wide, terrified eyes, and for a brief moment, it seemed like she was about to speak. But then, as quickly as the moment came, she closed her mouth, the words choking her before they could escape. She cried even harder, her shoulders shaking as the tears flowed. "Emma," I whispered, feeling the weight of her fear. "What's wrong, sweetheart? You can tell me. You're safe here." She only shook her head, her tears falling freely now. And in the silence of that moment, I knew something was terribly wrong. This wasn't just a phase. This wasn't just growing pains or the struggles of a pre-adolescent girl. No, this was deeper, darker. I could feel it in my bones. And I knew I couldn't ignore it any longer. The next morning, I called Charlotte. The connection took a while to establish. But when her voice finally came through, there was a tightness to it, an edge that spoke volumes. "Mom, is everything okay?" she asked, the concern in her voice barely hidden. "Charlotte," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm worried about Emma. She's hardly eating, and sometimes, she cries in the middle of the night. She's not herself." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. And when Charlotte spoke again, her voice sounded rehearsed. "Oh, don't worry, Mom. It's just a teenage phase. Emma's been going through a lot. She's a little nervous before we leave. She's lost some weight, but the doctor says it's nothing to worry about." I could hear the stress in her voice, but I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more she wasn't saying. "Charlotte, I don't think this is just a phase," I replied gently. "I'm worried about her." Another long pause. Then, finally, Charlotte said, "Mom, I'm really busy with work right now. I'll talk to you later. I need to go into a meeting. You're doing fine with Emma. I know you'll manage." Before I could respond, the line went dead. My hand shook slightly as I placed the receiver back on the cradle. Something wasn't right. Charlotte's words didn't feel sincere. She was hiding something, and I feared Emma was at the center of it. The next day, I received a call from Emma's school. It was from the school nurse. "Mrs. Parker. Mrs. Thompson," she said, her voice laced with concern. "I need to speak with you about Emma. She fainted during gym class. And she's very weak. She hasn't been eating much. And she's not interacting with her classmates. I'm really worried about her." My heart sank. This was not just a simple case of not eating. This was something far more serious. I quickly made my way to the school, my mind racing with worries about Emma. When I saw her lying on the cot in the health room, my heart shattered. In just a week, my granddaughter had become even thinner. Her skin was pale, her eyes dark with exhaustion. This was no longer just a matter of refusing to eat. There was something much deeper at play. "Emma," I said softly, sitting beside her, "not eating isn't good for your body. You need to take care of yourself. Sweetheart." She looked out the window, her gaze unfocused, as if she were somewhere far away. "I know, Grandma," she whispered, "but I just can't." Her voice was so small, so defeated, and I realized then that my granddaughter wasn't just dealing with hunger or an unwillingness to eat. No, something more terrifying was gripping her heart and soul. And I was running out of time to help her. The days after my visit to the school were a blur, each one filled with the same routine of trying to coax Emma to eat. Watching as she withdrew further into herself, and struggling with the gnawing feeling that something dark was happening beneath the surface. I knew I couldn't wait any longer for Emma to open up on her own. There was a wall around her that I couldn't break, but I refused to give up. I had worked with patients for years, and I knew that sometimes people don't speak because they don't feel safe. They don't speak because they are afraid of the consequences of telling the truth. But I was determined to make her feel safe, to let her know that no matter what, I would protect her. One night, as I was preparing dinner, I heard a knock at my bedroom door. I was surprised, as Emma hadn't come to me like this before. I set down my spoon, wiped my hands on a towel, and opened the door. There she stood, a fragile figure in white pajamas, her eyes wide with fear. "Grandma, I need to talk to you," she said in a trembling voice. "Of course, sweetheart. Come in," I said, my heart sinking at the sight of her distress. Emma hesitated before sitting on the edge of my bed. She kept her hands tightly clasped in her lap, her posture tense. The room was quiet, save for the soft ticking of the clock on the wall. I sat down beside her, not saying anything at first, just waiting, and then, with the faintest breath, she spoke. "Grandma, Dad," she began, choking on the words. I could see her trying to hold back tears. But they spilled over anyway. Dad hits Mom when he gets angry. The words came out in a rush. As though she had been holding them inside for so long that they were desperate to be free. I froze. My heart clenched in my chest. I had always suspected that something wasn't right. But to hear Emma say it out loud was a crushing blow. She went on, telling me how her father's anger had escalated over the years. How it started with arguments. Then pushing and shoving. And eventually, hitting. Emma spoke in a soft, tremulous voice. But the courage it took to share this with me, her grandmother, her protector, was beyond anything I could have imagined. And when I tried to stop him, he hit me too. Emma whispered, her hands trembling as she lifted her sleeve to reveal a faded bruise on her arm. My breath caught in my throat. It was a bruise I had never noticed before, hidden by the long sleeve of her shirt. But now it was clear, painful evidence of what she had been enduring. I felt a surge of anger rise in me. But I held it back. Emma needed reassurance, not fury. Emma, I said softly, gently cupping her face in my hands. You've done nothing wrong. What your dad is doing is wrong. And your mom should have protected you. Sweetheart, but I will protect you now. You're safe here, and I will make sure nothing like this ever happens again. Emma's eyes welled up with more tears. But she didn't pull away from me. I held her close, comforting her, though I was struggling to hold back my own tears. But Grandma, he says that if we tell anyone, he'll never let us see each other again. Mom always says it's a family matter and that we shouldn't talk about it. But I'm scared. Sweetheart, I whispered, brushing the tears from her cheeks. We have to tell someone. We need to get help. So that your dad can't hurt anyone anymore. Emma's body tensed at the thought. But I reassured her. I promise, Emma, we'll do the right thing. You're brave for telling me. And we will get through this together. That night, as Emma fell asleep beside me, I sat in the living room, my hands shaking as I picked up the phone. I dialed the police, my heart heavy with the weight of what I was about to do. Hello, a calm voice answered. I'd like to report domestic violence and child abuse, I said, my voice steady but my hands trembling. The officer on the other end asked the necessary questions, and I gave them all the details I could, including the bruises on Emma's arm. I could feel the weight of this moment, but I knew it was the right thing to do. For Emma, for Charlotte, for all of us. The next morning, 2 police cars arrived at my home, and I stood by Emma, holding her hand as we faced the officers. I could see the concern in their eyes as they spoke to us. Their professionalism a comfort to me, though nothing could take away the hurt that had settled in my heart for my family. Emma was brave. She spoke to Officer Morrison, the female officer assigned to the case, telling her everything, her voice quiet but clear. The process was slow, but it was the beginning of the end of this nightmare. As I stood there, looking at my granddaughter, I realized that while the road ahead would be long and difficult, this was the first step toward healing. Emma would be safe now. And that was all that mattered. I could feel the weight of my promise lifting as I held her close, knowing that nothing could ever harm her again. A year had passed since that pivotal day when Emma had found the courage to speak the truth. The journey of healing had been long and difficult, but every step had been worth it. Emma was no longer the frail, silent girl who had arrived at my doorstep. Her cheeks had filled out, and the spark had returned to her eyes. The nightmares that once plagued her had slowly faded, replaced by moments of laughter and joy. She was slowly reclaiming the life she deserved. Charlotte had found a new job at a local company, and with the support of therapy, both she and Emma were starting to rebuild their lives. It was a slow process, but they were learning to trust again, to find their way back to happiness. As for me, my heart swelled with pride every time I looked at Emma. She had endured so much, yet she was strong, resilient, and full of hope for the future. On a warm spring day, we found ourselves in the park, enjoying a picnic beneath the shade of the trees. Emma, now confident and full of life, helped me arrange the sandwiches on the blanket. Her once timid voice had transformed into a strong, reassuring one. Grandma, I'm so glad I found the courage to speak up, she said, her eyes meeting mine with a sincere smile. I hugged her tightly, feeling a sense of peace I hadn't known in years. You were so brave, Emma, I whispered. Sometimes, the truth brings pain, but it's what sets us free. Charlotte joined us, her hand gently resting on Emma's shoulder. Together, we sat in the warmth of the afternoon, united as a family, ready to face whatever the future had in store. And so, we moved forward, one step at a time, knowing that with love and courage, anything was possible. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more life stories and inspiring journeys.